The 2025 Miami Grand Prix. The United States of America, the land of freedom, bald eagles, guns, capitalism, and home for the Miami Street Circuit, one of about 5,000 US races on the calendar. And it is certainly one of the circuits of all time that provides mediocre racing that's boring even for the drivers. I mean, Fernando Alonso in 2023 was literally watching what was going on around him on TVs, nothing was happening. And of course it wouldn't be an American Grand Prix without copious amounts of cringe.
Beautiful this V-carb is. Look at this. Red Bull Summer Edition.
But alas, it still has a sprint race because... Oh, and while Spa-Francorchamps will have to rotate and Monaco will remain on the calendar until Lance Stroll wins a championship, the Miami Street Circuit will be on the calendar until 2041. I wish I was joking. Oh, but it's all good guys, because the pit lane speed limit will be increased, so get ready for some sweet cash, nail-biting action. Safety? Who needs that when you can have fake boats on top of fake water, am I right? What's a couple dead people every now and then? It just makes it more exciting, guys, come on. As you can tell, I'm not a fan of this circuit. It doesn't really have interesting characteristics, corners, or sections, because it's a street circuit. Don't we all just love that? In fact, we love it so much, and F1 is just so great at hearing us fans that there will be a street circuit in Madrid too starting next year. Guys, since we love street circuits this passionately, I think F1 should just make the calendar exclusively made out of street circuits. Who even needs this Spa-Francorchamps, whatever? For as much as street circuits can suck, at least we'll sometimes get cool one-off liveries. Like this one. By Ferrari. Why the fuck did you do this, Ferrari? I swear we see the HP logo. And how the fuck did you manage to make this even uglier? I swear Ferrari is like the complete opposite of V-Carb, who had a beautiful livery to begin with and made it even more beautiful. This is how you do special liveries, people. But anyways, enough ranting and let's talk about some action. And by that I mean the fight between the admins of V-Carb and Alpine. Just kidding, of course, I mean the fight between Mohammed bin Sulayem and the drivers. He posted on Instagram hinting that the rules on swearing might finally go away, and of course he didn't miss the opportunity to remind us that he's a racing driver. A very good one at that. Speaking of swearing, I also have to mention that Max Verstappen is no longer pregnant, with him giving birth being the perfect opportunity to skip media day and get spotted without his Red Bull kit for the first time ever, probably. But now let's get into it. Since this is a sprint weekend like I said, there's only one practice session in which Ollie Behrman dropped it, ending his session early. McLaren's mechanics forgot all kinds of shit in Norris's car, after which he almost crashed into Ocon. Piastri tapped the wall but still managed to come out on top, followed by Leclerc and Verstappen, two Williams that snuck in there through one way or another, and Hamilton was down in 13th as his trip of pain and suffering with Ferrari continues. In SQ1 it was traffic paradise because all the sessions are incredibly short. Antonelli set a cracking lap and so did Russell behind him, Williams continued their practice form and were doing phenomenally, Behrman's struggle continued as he went out in 20th, probably because he never raced here and had a short-lived FP1, Liam Lawson almost dropped it, which would have been more disastrous than his form this season, Yuki was shockingly down in 18th as he missed the flag, not helped by having an awful banker lap of course, and Doohan had a full-blown meltdown after going out.
Man, that's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. Yeah, sorry, mate. If you're gonna send him after me, you have to make sure he's ready or before me. I can't turn out and have to turn out because he's gonna run into me. And then you guys put me out of Q1.
I guess he didn't practice exiting the garage in the simulator, am I right? In all seriousness, I personally suspect that this is because he knows something we don't about the rumors of Colapinto replacing him at Imola, but we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. In SQ2 it was total domination by McLaren as you'd expect. Gasly tapped the wall, which saw him out sadly, Alonso worked his magic and made a miracle SQ3 appearance for Aston, Carlos completely ruined his lap after locking up, and Lawson was completely and utterly shredded by his teammate. Again, it's now time to bolt on the softs for SQ3, where George blew his load too early and only managed 5th despite the pace of the Mercedes, but it was Antonelli who maximized it by setting another cracking lap and taking pole position at a track he's never raced in at just 18 years old and with only one practice session, which is simply sensational. And Verstappen managed to drag his John Deere to 4th behind the two McLarens. The heavens opened just like they did in Australia, but this time it was Leclerc instead of Hadjar that crashed in the formation lap, and if I had a penny for every time that this happened, I I would have 3 pennies, which isn't a lot, but it's still weird that this happened 3 times to him. The visibility was completely horrendous, so we got an immediate red flag followed by safety car laps that lasted for about 3 decades. But we finally got racing. Kimi had a bad start and was overtaken by Piastri, then went off. Russell's visor was somehow broken so he couldn't see shit. Sainz and Ocon were fighting all over the final corner, but since I can't show anything without this happening, here's what it looked like. Berman was on a charge and now the track was dry, so it was time for pit stops. Hamilton came first, then Red Bull gave Max what could only be described as the worst pit release I've ever seen, which ruined both his and Antonelli's races. Sainz turned in about 3 years early for the chicane and crashed out, making his already awful season even more miserable. McLaren then had to pit, so they decided to bring Piastri first, then Lando. But just as he was in the box, Lawson hit one of the worst moves I've ever seen, hitting Alonso when he was completely off track, which brought out the safety car, under which Lando was the one who won, followed by Piastri, Hamilton and Albon, albeit he got a penalty later, and Stroll somehow scored points. But let's now get into the real deal: qualifying. In Q1, Hamilton locked up on his first lap. Berman was still struggling, unlike Bortoleto, who managed 11th, but it was Verstappen ahead of the 2 McLarens, with Mercedes still being in the mix. Q2 saw lap times off the charts, first from Max, then from Lando and Piastri, but in the end it was 2 McLarens, 2 Mercedes, Max Verstappen, and 2 Williams, with Hamilton shockingly down in 12th and Tsunoda actually getting into Q3. Speaking of Q3, it was now time to either make it or break it, and it was ridiculously close, with Piastri being just 17 thousandths off Verstappen and Lando being 3 thousandths off, as Leclerc locked up and went off, but even after his second run he was still only 8th and behind the 2 Williams, making Ferrari's already terrible weekend even worse. But of course Max had to show them who's daddy and took pole position, setting a 3rd track record this season, all the while Piastri was down in 4th. Rain was forecast again for the main race as it was cloudy and the track was somewhat wet, but now it's lights out. Max had a great start but locked up into turn 1, which gave Lando a chance. However, he was pushed wide, which dropped him down to 6th. There was a battle of terrorists at the back, and by that I mean Doohan and Lawson, which brought out the virtual safety car. After it ended, Piastri got Antonelli and started chasing Max, which gave us a beautiful battle for a few laps, but ultimately Oscar got through. Alonso, or should I say Unk, then spun all by himself. Norris then also caught Max, got by at one point but had to give the position back because it was illegal, only to get through legitimately a lap later. However, all the fighting allowed Oscar to drive into the sunset. Berman's car farted, which brought out another virtual safety car, during which Tsunoda sped in the pit lane. Then, 5 seconds after it ended, another Ferrari PU exploded, bringing it out once again. But after we got racing again, Sainz got by both Ferraris, who then proceeded to have a war over a position swap for 7th and 8th. Which is just classic Ferrari, isn't it?
All race. I can break through. DRS to Charles, and go ahead like this. Is behind 1.5.
You guys,
The civil war was settled after swapping around twice to no avail, and even allowed Sainz to try an F125 move on Hamilton on the last lap, which was just horrendous. The race then concluded with Piastri driving a sensational race, followed by Lando with one of the most dominant 1-2s ever by over 30 seconds. Albon managed 5th, and Aston Martin had a complete disaster class. As for the Drivers' Championship, Piastri extended his lead further, and Max Verstappen continues his free fall from grace, whilst in the Constructors, it was Williams who benefited most, scoring very good points. But click on the video on screen to watch more slop, and see ya.